I've been looking for you. You're the one who knows other people's secrets.
I always knew my marriage was like a leaky faucet. You ignore it until it floods the basement. Only, with Maggie, the leak was white, sticky, and came back from a business trip in a way Clorox couldn't fix. The discovery hit me on a Tuesday night in October. I'd just pulled into our driveway after a 14-hour shift at the engineering firm, my hands still stained with machine oil, and my back screaming from hunching over blueprints. The house looked normal enough, colonial style, white picket fence, the American dream wrapped in mortgage payments and property taxes. But something felt off the moment I stepped inside. Maggie's voice drifted from upstairs, talking on the phone in that honey-sweet tone she reserved for clients and lovers. Not that I knew about the lovers yet. "No, Thursday won't work. I have that deposition prep with the Henderson case," she was saying. "But Friday could be very interesting." I dumped my work boots by the door and headed for the kitchen, where our 18-year-old daughter Emma sat hunched over her laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard with the intensity of a war correspondent filing breaking news. "Hey, kiddo," I said, opening the fridge and grabbing a beer. "How was school?" She didn't look up. "Mom's clothes are in the washer. She said to tell you not to move them to the dryer until she gets a chance to check them." "Check them for what?" Emma finally glanced up, her expression a mixture of teenage disdain and something else. Pity, maybe? "I don't know, Dad. Stains or whatever." She seemed really worried about it. The beer suddenly tasted flat. "What kind of stains?" "God, I don't know. I'm not the laundry police. Ask her yourself," but I didn't ask Maggie. Instead, I waited until she finished her phone call and went to take a shower, then crept down to the basement laundry room, like a thief in my own house. The washing machine sat silent, its contents hidden behind the steel door. My hand hesitated on the handle. Some doors, once opened, can never be closed again. I opened it anyway. Maggie's black business suit lay crumpled at the bottom of the drum, along with a silk blouse and a pair of lace underwear that cost more than my weekly grocery budget. I lifted the blouse first, holding it up to the basement's harsh fluorescent light. There, scattered across the fabric like some obscene constellation, were white stains, dried, crusty, unmistakable. My hand shook as I examined the underwear. More stains. Fresh ones. "Finding everything okay down there, honey?" I spun around so fast I nearly fell into the washer. Maggie stood at the bottom of the stairs, her auburn hair wrapped in a towel, wearing the terry cloth robe I'd given her for Christmas 3 years ago. She looked beautiful, as always. She also looked guilty as hell. "Just checking on the laundry," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "Emma said you were worried about stains." Her green eyes flicked to the clothes in my hands, then back to my face. For just a moment, I saw something there. Fear, maybe, or calculation. Then her lawyer mask slipped back into place. "Oh, that. I spilled coffee on myself during lunch. You know how expensive dry cleaning is these days." "Coffee," I repeated. "Yes, coffee, with cream." She moved closer, reaching for the blouse. "I'll take care of it." "You don't need to worry about my laundry." I held on to the fabric. "This doesn't look like coffee, Maggie." "What are you suggesting?" The question hung between us like a loaded tool. I could feel the weight of 20 years of marriage pressing down on my shoulders. The mortgage, the shared bank accounts, Emma's college fund, the comfortable routine of suburban life. All of it balanced on the edge of whatever truth was hiding in those stains. "I'm not suggesting anything," I said finally, releasing the blouse. "Just be more careful with your coffee." She smiled then, the same smile that had convinced me to marry her 2 decades ago. "Of course, darling, I always am." But as she gathered up her clothes and headed back upstairs, I caught her reflection in the basement window. She wasn't smiling anymore. That night I lay in bed listening to Maggie's breathing and staring at the ceiling. She'd fallen asleep easily, the way innocent people do. Or maybe the way guilty people do once they think they've gotten away with something. I waited until her breathing deepened into the rhythm of REM sleep, then slipped out of bed and padded to my home office. The computer's blue glow felt harsh in the darkness as I opened a new browser window and typed in a search that would change everything. DNA testing for infidelity evidence. The results were immediate and comprehensive. Dozens of private labs offered discrete testing services. All I needed was a sample of the suspected evidence and a credit card. Results in 48 hours. Guaranteed confidentiality. Court-admissible accuracy. I bookmarked 3 different labs, then cleared my browser history and crept back to bed. Maggie stirred as I slid under the covers. "Everything okay?" she mumbled. "Just couldn't sleep. Too much coffee." She made a soft sound that might have been laughter. "Seems to be going around." The next morning brought the kind of October rain that turns New England into a watercolor painting. All gray washes and blurred edges. I sat in my truck outside Gene Tech Labs, a nondescript building wedged between a Chinese restaurant and a check-cashing place, holding a manila envelope that contained Maggie's stained blouse. My friend Danny Chen worked the night shift at Gene Tech. We'd gone to high school together, back when the world seemed simpler and wives didn't come home wearing other men's DNA. Danny owed me a favor from when I'd helped him install a new furnace in his mother's house, and favors were a currency I was about to spend heavily. The lab's waiting room smelled like disinfectant and broken dreams. A handful of people sat in plastic chairs, avoiding eye contact and clutching their own manila envelopes. A woman with hollow eyes and a man in an expensive suit who kept checking his Rolex. All of us united by suspicion and the need to know. "Can I help you?" The receptionist looked like she'd heard every sob story in the book and stopped believing them somewhere around chapter 3. "I'm here to see Danny Chen. He's expecting me." She buzzed me through a security door into the lab proper, where Danny waited in a white coat that made him look more official than the guy who used to help me cheat on chemistry tests. "Jesus, Mike," he said, shaking his head. "When you called, I hoped you were kidding." "Do I look like I'm kidding?" He took the envelope without opening it. "You know I can't give you official results without proper chain of custody, right? This is just a favor between friends." "I understand. And if this comes back positive, then I'll know." Danny sighed and led me to a small office where he filled out paperwork using codes and numbers instead of names. 48 hours, he said. "I'll call you when it's ready. And Mike, I hope I'm calling to tell you you're paranoid." But we both knew I wasn't paranoid. Paranoid people don't find what they're looking for. I spent the next 2 days in a fog of normalcy. I went to work, reviewed engineering reports, attended meetings about municipal water systems and bridge load calculations. I came home to dinner conversations about Emma's college applications and Maggie's latest cases. I smiled and nodded and played the role of the faithful husband while inside, something was slowly dying. Thursday evening, Maggie announced she'd be working late on a deposition. "Don't wait up," she said, kissing my cheek with lips that had probably kissed someone else that morning. "This Henderson case is going to be the end of me." After she left, Emma and I ordered pizza and watched a movie neither of us was really interested in. She kept texting throughout, her phone buzzing with the social urgency that only teenagers understand. "Dad," she said during a commercial break, "are you and Mom okay?" The question caught me off guard. "Why would you ask that?" "I don't know. You guys seem different lately, like you're both pretending to be happy." Out of the mouths of babes. "Everything's fine, sweetheart. Just work stress." She studied my face with the analytical intensity she'd inherited from her mother. "If you say so." "But Dad? If something was wrong, you'd tell me, right?" I wanted to promise her that I would. Instead, I said, "Let's focus on getting you into college. Everything else can wait, but everything else wouldn't wait." At 11:47 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from Danny. "Results are in. You need to see this." I met him at the lab at midnight, when the building was empty except for security guards and people with secrets. Danny led me to his office and closed the door before handing me a folder marked Confidential Analysis. "The stains contain seminal fluid," he said without preamble, "but it's not yours." Even though I'd expected it, the words hit me like a physical blow. "You're sure?" "DNA doesn't lie. The sample shows genetic markers consistent with an African-American male, probably in his 30s or 40s. There's also something else." He handed me a second sheet of paper. I ran a full panel, just to be thorough. The fluid tested positive for chlamydia. The room seemed to tilt. "What does that mean?" "It means whoever your wife is sleeping with has a sexually transmitted infection. And if she's having unprotected sex with him, she could have it too. You need to get tested, Mike. Both of you do." I stared at the papers until the words blurred together. 20 years of marriage, reduced to clinical analysis and positive test results. How long does chlamydia take to show symptoms? Could be weeks, could be months. Sometimes there are no symptoms at all, especially in women. But left untreated. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. I folded the papers and put them in my jacket pocket next to my heart. "Thanks, Danny. I owe you." "No, you don't. Just be careful how you handle this. I've seen what this kind of information can do to people." But as I drove home through the empty streets, past the sleeping houses full of sleeping families, I wasn't thinking about being careful. I was thinking about the look in Maggie's eyes when she'd told me the stains were coffee. I was thinking about Emma's question about whether we were okay. I was thinking about 20 years of trust reduced to DNA markers and bacterial infections. Most of all, I was thinking about what came next. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in my home office with Danny's test results spread across my desk like a hand of cards that couldn't possibly win. The house creaked around me with the familiar sounds of settling wood and old pipes. But everything felt different now. Contaminated. Maggie came home at 2:30 a.m., her heels clicking on the hardwood as she tried to move quietly through the downstairs. I heard her pause outside my office door, saw the light from the hallway dim as her shadow blocked it. "Mike, are you up?" I quickly shuffled the papers into a drawer. "Just working on some calculations for the Morrison Bridge project." She opened the door and leaned against the frame, still wearing the navy blue dress she'd put on that morning. Her lipstick was gone, and her hair looked like she'd run her fingers through it, or someone else had. "You should get some sleep," she said. "It's late." "How did the deposition prep go?" "Fine. Tedious, but fine. You know how these insurance cases are." I nodded as if I believed her. "Did you grab dinner somewhere?" "Just a salad at the office." She moved closer, and I caught a whiff of cologne that wasn't mine, something expensive and masculine. "Are you coming to bed?" "In a few minutes." She kissed the top of my head, and I had to fight not to flinch. "Don't stay up too much longer." "You look exhausted." After she left, I waited until I heard the shower running upstairs, then pulled out my laptop and did something I'd never thought I'd do. I logged into our cell phone account and pulled up Maggie's usage records. The numbers told a story I didn't want to read. Over the past 3 months, there had been dozens of calls to a number I didn't recognize. Long calls, sometimes lasting over an hour. The pattern was clear. Most of the calls happened during work hours or late at night when I was asleep. I cross-referenced the number with a reverse lookup service. Dr. Jerome Washington, internal medicine, affiliated with St. Mary's Hospital, the same hospital where Maggie's law firm handled malpractice cases. My hands were shaking as I pulled up Dr. Washington's professional profile, African American, 42 years old, divorced. His photo showed a handsome man with intelligent eyes and the kind of confident smile that probably made patients trust him with their lives. And wives trust him with their bodies. I spent the next hour going through Maggie's phone records with the methodical precision I usually reserved for engineering projects, the calls to doctor. Washington's number started 4 months ago, right around the time Maggie began working on the Henderson malpractice case. But there were other numbers too. Other patterns. Dr. Michael Torres, orthopedic surgeon. Attorney James Mitchell from a rival firm. Professor David Kim from the university where Maggie sometimes taught continuing education seminars. My wife wasn't just having an affair, she was having affairs. Plural. The shower stopped running upstairs, and I quickly closed the laptop. But the damage was done. The careful facade of my marriage had cracked wide open, and I could see all the rot underneath. I finally went to bed around 4 a.m., lying stiffly on my side of the mattress while Maggie slept peacefully beside me. She looked innocent in sleep, her face relaxed and beautiful. But I kept thinking about the DNA results in my desk drawer, about the phone calls to multiple men, about the cologne that wasn't mine. In the morning, I made coffee and scrambled eggs while Maggie got ready for work. Emma stumbled downstairs in her pajamas, her hair a blonde disaster and her eyes still puffy from sleep. "Morning, sunshine," I said, putting a plate in front of her. "Ugh, too early for sunshine." She poked at the eggs with her fork. "Is Mom gone already?" "She left about 10 minutes ago, said she had an early meeting." Emma nodded and pulled out her phone, immediately absorbed in whatever teenage drama was unfolding on social media. I watched her scroll through Instagram posts and Snapchat stories, marveling at how easily she navigated a world of digital connections and virtual relationships. "Emma," I said carefully, "have you noticed anything different about your mother lately?" She looked up from her phone, suddenly alert. "Different how?" "I don't know. Working later hours, maybe?" Seeming distracted. "Dad, Mom's always worked crazy hours. That's how she made partner." Emma's expression grew suspicious. "Why are you asking?" "Just wondering. Sometimes I feel like I barely see her anymore." "Maybe you should try harder to see her then." The words came out sharper than I think she intended. "I mean, you guys barely talk anymore. You're always in your office working on bridge stuff and she's always dealing with legal stuff. It's like you live in the same house but different worlds." The accuracy of her observations stung. "When did you become so wise?" "I've been watching you guys for 18 years. You think I don't notice things?" She stood up and grabbed her backpack. "I'm going to be late for school." After she left, I sat alone in the kitchen with my coffee and the morning paper, but I couldn't focus on the headlines. My mind kept circling back to the test results, the phone records, the cologne on Maggie's skin. I called in sick to work, the first sick day I'd taken in 3 years, and drove to the public library downtown. I needed to think, and I couldn't do it in the house where Maggie and I had built our life together. The library was mostly empty at 10 a.m. on a Friday, just a few retirees reading newspapers and a homeless man sleeping in the periodical section. I found a quiet corner and opened my laptop, connecting to the public Wi-Fi to avoid leaving digital footprints at home. I spent the morning researching private investigators, divorce attorneys, and STD testing. I learned about community property laws and custody arrangements. I read forum posts from other betrayed spouses, their stories of discovery and devastation and revenge. Some of the revenge stories were elaborate and cruel: wives who emptied bank accounts and disappeared, husbands who posted intimate photos on social media, people who destroyed careers and reputations with carefully orchestrated campaigns of humiliation. I bookmarked several of the more creative examples. By lunchtime, I had a plan. It wasn't a good plan, and it probably wasn't a legal plan, but it was a plan. I would gather evidence, real evidence, the kind that would hold up in court. I would document everything: the affairs, the lies, the financial deceptions I was starting to suspect, and then I would destroy the life Maggie had built on the foundation of my trust. But first, I needed to know exactly how deep the betrayal went. I drove home and waited for Emma to get back from school. When she walked through the door, I was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and what I hoped was a casual expression. "Hey kiddo, how was school?" "The usual, boring classes, annoying people, too much homework." She dropped her backpack and opened the refrigerator. "Are you feeling better? Mom said you called in sick." "Much better. Actually, I was thinking we could do something fun this weekend. Maybe go to that new escape room place you mentioned." Emma turned around with a surprised smile. "Really? You hate those kinds of things?" "I hate a lot of things I should probably try." "What do you say? Father-daughter bonding time?" "I'd love that. But Mom's got that charity gala thing on Saturday night. The one for the children's hospital. She's been planning it for months." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "She mentioned that. Are you going with her?" "God, no. Those things are so boring. Besides, I have plans with friends." Emma grabbed an apple and headed for the stairs. "But you should go with her. She asked if you wanted to, but you said you'd probably be too tired." I had no memory of that conversation. But then again, I had no memory of a lot of conversations lately. I'd been sleepwalking through my marriage for months, maybe years. After Emma went upstairs to do homework, I called the hotel where the gala was being held. The Grand Marquis downtown, the kind of place where charity events and wedding receptions cost more than most people make in a month. "I'm calling about the Children's Hospital Gala on Saturday night," I told the events coordinator. "My wife is one of the organizers, and I wanted to confirm the details." "Of course. It's going to be a wonderful evening. Cocktails at 7, dinner at 8, dancing until midnight. We're expecting nearly 300 guests. And the organizers' table? Where will that be located?" "Right up front, near the stage." "Table number 1. Is there anything specific you need?" "Just wanted to make sure I could find my wife." "Margaret Sullivan from Sullivan and Associates." "Oh yes, Mrs. Sullivan. She's been so helpful with the planning. Such a lovely woman." I thanked her and hung up, then sat staring at my phone for a long time. Saturday night. A crowded gala with dancing and dim lights and plenty of opportunities for secret conversations. The perfect cover for an affair, or the perfect opportunity for a husband to see exactly what his wife was up to. Saturday evening, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, adjusting my tie and trying to look like a man who didn't know his wife was cheating on him. The black tuxedo felt foreign after months of work clothes and casual wear, like a costume for a play I didn't want to perform in. "You look handsome," Maggie said from the bedroom, where she was putting on earrings. She wore a midnight blue gown that hugged her curves and cost more than my monthly salary. Her auburn hair was swept up in an elegant chignon, and her makeup was flawless. She looked beautiful. She also looked like she was dressing for someone else. "You look stunning," I said, and meant it. Even knowing what I knew, even carrying Danny's test results in my jacket pocket like a loaded weapon, I could still see why other men wanted her. "Thank you." She smiled at me in the mirror, and for a moment I almost forgot about the phone records and the DNA evidence. Almost. "I'm so glad you decided to come tonight. It means a lot to me." The lie came easily. "Wouldn't miss it." We drove to the Grand Marquis in relative silence, listening to jazz on the radio and watching the city lights blur past the windows. Maggie checked her phone twice, typing quick responses to messages I couldn't see. "Work?" I asked. "Just last-minute details for tonight." You know how these events are. Something always goes wrong at the last minute. I nodded and turned back to the window, watching couples walk hand in hand down the sidewalk. Young couples, old couples, people who still looked at each other like they shared secrets worth keeping. The Grand Marquis blazed with light, its circular driveway clogged with luxury cars and valets in red jackets. We joined the stream of formally dressed guests flowing through the marble lobby toward the ballroom, where the sound of conversation and clinking glasses created a soundtrack of civilized wealth. "Margaret, there you are." A woman in silver sequins descended on us like a glittering bird of prey. I recognized her as Patricia Henley, one of Maggie's partners, and the kind of person who collected charity board positions like other people collected stamps. "Patricia, you remember my husband Mike," Maggie said. Patricia's smile was bright and empty. "Of course, the engineer. How nice that you could make it tonight." Her tone suggested it wasn't nice at all, that I was somehow out of place among the doctors and lawyers and business owners who made up Maggie's professional circle. I'd heard that tone before, at other events, other gatherings, where my blue-collar background showed like a stain on expensive fabric. "I wouldn't miss it," I said. "Maggie's put so much work into this." "She certainly has. We couldn't have done it without her." Patricia linked arms with Maggie. "Come on, darling. Dr. Washington is looking for you. Something about the auction items." I felt Maggie tense slightly at the mention of Dr. Washington's name. "I'll be right there." "Let me just get Mike settled at our table." "Oh, don't worry about that. I'm sure he can find his own way around." Patricia was already steering Maggie toward the crowd. "The doctors are all gathered by the bar, and you know how impatient they get." I watched them disappear into the sea of formal wear, leaving me standing alone by the entrance like a piece of abandoned luggage. Around me, conversations flowed in the comfortable rhythm of people who belonged, who knew each other's names and shared each other's social circles. I made my way to the bar and ordered a scotch, then positioned myself where I could see most of the ballroom. Table number 1 sat prominently near the stage, just as the event's coordinator had described. 8 chairs around a table set with crystal and china and enough silverware to perform surgery. "Mike Sullivan, right?" I turned to find a tall man with graying temples and the kind of confident handshake that suggested he was used to being important. "I'm sorry, have we met?" "James Mitchell. I work with your wife sometimes on referral cases." He smiled, but his eyes were calculating. "She's mentioned you." James Mitchell, the attorney whose number appeared frequently in Maggie's phone records. I kept my expression neutral. "All good things, I hope." "Of course. She's very proud of your engineering work. Municipal infrastructure, isn't it?" "Bridges, mostly. Not as glamorous as legal work." "I don't know about that. Bridges connect people, bring communities together. That's important work." He sipped his drink, studying me over the rim of his glass. "Maggie's lucky to have someone so grounded." The word carried weight, like he was really saying something else. Something about knowing my place, staying in my lane, not asking too many questions. "I'm the lucky one," I said. "She's an amazing woman." "She certainly is, very dedicated to her work." Before I could respond, the lights dimmed and a voice over the sound system asked everyone to take their seats for dinner. I made my way to table 1, where place cards indicated I was seated between Maggie and someone named Dr. Torres. Dr. Michael Torres, according to my research. Orthopedic surgeon, 45 years old, divorced. Another name from Maggie's phone records. He was already seated when I arrived, a compact man with dark hair and surgeon's hands. His smile was professional and distant. "You must be Margaret's husband," he said, standing to shake hands. "I'm Mike Torres." "Mike Sullivan. Looks like we're both Mikes." "Common name." "I hear you're an engineer." "That's right. And you're a surgeon. Orthopedic, mostly sports injuries and joint replacements, not as exciting as it sounds." I settled into my chair and looked around the table. 8 seats, but only 6 were occupied. Maggie's chair remained empty, and so did the one marked Dr. Washington. "Where's our hostess?" asked Patricia Henley, who had somehow materialized at the table without me noticing. "She's handling some last-minute details," said Dr. Torres. "You know how Margaret is, she wants everything perfect." The way he said her name, with just a hint of familiarity, made my jaw clench. These people knew my wife in ways I was only beginning to understand. They shared jokes and glances and private conversations that excluded me completely. Dinner was served, some kind of chicken that probably cost $50 a plate, but I barely tasted it. I was too busy watching the room, looking for Maggie among the crowd of guests. I spotted her near the silent auction tables, deep in conversation with a tall black man who had to be Dr. Washington. They stood close together, closer than professional colleagues needed to stand. His hand rested on her lower back as he leaned down to whisper something in her ear. She laughed and touched his arm, the gesture intimate and familiar. "Excuse me," I said, standing abruptly. "I need some air." I walked quickly toward the hotel's lobby, my heart pounding and my hands shaking with rage. Behind me, I could hear the sound of laughter and conversation, the civilized noise of people enjoying an evening that was costing me everything. In the lobby, I found a quiet corner and pulled out my phone. I scrolled through my contacts until I found Danny's number. "Mike? What's wrong?" "It's almost 10 o'clock. "I need another favor," I said. "A big one." "Jesus, Mike. What's going on?" "I'm at a charity gala watching my wife flirt with her boyfriend. And I just realized I'm not going to take this lying down." There was a long pause. "What do you need?" "Information. Phone records, financial records, anything you can get me. I'm going to destroy her, Danny, but I need ammunition." "Mike, think about what you're saying. This could ruin your life too." "My life's already ruined, I just didn't know it yet." I hung up and walked back toward the ballroom, but I didn't return to my table. Instead, I positioned myself near the silent auction tables, close enough to hear conversations, but far enough away to avoid being noticed. Maggie and Dr. Washington had moved to a quieter corner where they stood with their heads together like conspirators. I couldn't hear their words, but I could see their body language, the way she leaned into him, the way he touched her hand when he made a point, the way they looked at each other like they shared secrets I would never be part of. "There you are." I turned to find Maggie approaching, her cheeks flushed and her eyes bright. "I was wondering where you'd gone." "Just looking at the auction items. Some interesting pieces." Dr. Washington was just telling me about his trip to Italy last month. He brought back some wonderful photographs for the auction. How thoughtful of him. She studied my face, her lawyer's instincts picking up on something in my tone. "Are you feeling all right? You seem tense." "Just tired. It's been a long week. We can leave after the dancing if you want. I know these events aren't really your thing." I looked at her beautiful face, at the woman I'd loved for 20 years, and felt something die inside my chest. "No, I'm fine. I wouldn't want to cut short your evening with your colleagues." Something flickered in her eyes. Guilt, maybe, or fear. But then her professional mask slipped back into place. "All right. But let me know if you change your mind." She returned to Dr. Washington, and I returned to my corner, watching and waiting and planning. The evening stretched on with speeches and dancing and the kind of forced merriment that comes with expensive wine and tax-deductible donations. I stayed until midnight, watching my wife dance with other men while I stood alone by the wall like a piece of furniture. When we finally left, she was quiet in the car, checking her phone and responding to messages. "Good turnout tonight," I said. "Very good." We raised almost $200,000. Dr. Washington seemed pleased. Her fingers paused over her phone screen. He should be. He donated a lot of his time to organizing this. I'm sure he did. We drove the rest of the way home in silence, but my mind was racing. I had names now, faces to go with the phone numbers. I had seen the easy closeness between my wife and her lovers, the way they moved in her orbit like planets around a star. But most importantly, I had a plan. Sunday morning brought the kind of crisp autumn weather that usually made me want to rake leaves and drink coffee on the porch. Instead, I sat in my home office with my laptop open and a legal pad covered in notes, planning the systematic destruction of my marriage. I'd been awake since 4 a.m., unable to sleep after the previous night's performance. The image of Maggie dancing with Dr. Washington kept playing in my mind like a broken record. The way she'd looked at him, touched him, smiled at him with genuine warmth while treating me like an obligation. Emma knocked on my office door around 9 a.m., still in her pajamas and looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. "Mom wants to know if you're coming to brunch," she said. "She made reservations at that place downtown. Tell her I have work to catch up on." "Dad, it's Sunday. Can't the Bridges wait one day?" I looked up from my notes, taking in my daughter's rumpled appearance and concerned expression. She had Maggie's green eyes but my stubborn chin, and right now both were focused on me with uncomfortable intensity. "Sometimes work can't wait," I said, "but you two go ahead. Have fun." Emma lingered in the doorway. "Are you sure you're okay? You've been acting weird lately." "Define weird." "I don't know, distracted, like you're thinking about something else all the time." She paused. "Is it about Mom?" The question caught me off guard. "Why would you ask that?" "Because you guys barely talk anymore, and last night when you came home from that charity thing, you both looked like you'd been to a funeral instead of a party." Smart kid. Too smart for her own good. "Everything's fine, Emma. Your mom and I are just going through a busy period at work." She didn't look convinced, but she nodded and headed back downstairs. A few minutes later, I heard the front door close and Maggie's car pulling out of the driveway. I waited 10 minutes to make sure they were really gone, then went upstairs to the master bedroom. I'd never searched through my wife's personal belongings before. It had seemed like a violation of trust. But trust was a luxury I could no longer afford. Maggie's side of the walk-in closet was organized with military precision. Business suits arranged by color, shoes in clear plastic boxes, accessories sorted in velvet-lined drawers. I went through everything methodically, looking for evidence I could use. In her jewelry box, hidden beneath a tray of earrings, I found a small key that didn't match any lock in our house. In her purse, I discovered a second cell phone, a cheap prepaid model with no contact information saved in the memory. But the call log told a story. Dozens of outgoing calls to numbers I recognized from my research. Dr. Washington, Dr. Torres, James Mitchell, and several others I hadn't identified yet. The phone's text message history had been deleted, but I took photos of the call log with my own phone. Evidence for later. In Maggie's dresser, beneath a stack of lingerie I didn't remember buying, I found credit card statements for an account I didn't know existed. The charges painted a picture of a secret life: expensive restaurants, hotel rooms, jewelry purchases, spa treatments, all paid for with money that should have been going toward Emma's college fund. I photographed everything, then carefully returned each item to its original position. By the time Maggie and Emma returned from brunch, I was back in my office, apparently absorbed in engineering calculations. "How was brunch?" I called out when I heard them come in. "Great," Emma shouted back. "Mom told me about the college tour we're taking next weekend." "You're coming, right?" I looked at my calendar, where I'd already blocked out the weekend for surveillance and evidence gathering. "I'll try." "Depends on work." Maggie appeared in my doorway, still wearing the designer dress she'd put on for brunch. "It's important to Emma that you be there." I said I'd try. Trying isn't the same as committing. Her tone was sharp, the way it got when she was cross-examining a hostile witness. "She's our daughter, Mike. She should be your priority." The irony was almost funny. "You're right. Family should always be the priority." Something in my voice made her pause. She studied my face for a moment, then stepped into the office and closed the door behind her. "Is there something you want to say to me?" This was it. The moment where I could confront her, demand the truth, maybe even try to save what was left of our marriage. But looking at her standing there in her expensive dress, fresh from brunch with our daughter while I sat surrounded by evidence of her betrayal, I realized I didn't want to save anything. I wanted revenge. Just that you're right about priorities, I said. I've been thinking about that a lot lately. She waited for me to say more, but I turned back to my computer screen. After a moment, she left, closing the door with a soft click that sounded like a period at the end of a sentence. That afternoon, while Maggie worked in her own home office and Emma studied upstairs, I made a series of phone calls. First to Danny, to cash in more favors and request deeper background checks on Maggie's lovers. Then to a private investigator I'd found online, a former police detective who specialized in matrimonial cases. I need surveillance, I told him. Comprehensive documentation of my wife's activities. That's expensive, he warned, and potentially messy. You sure you want to go down this road? I'm sure. All right. I'll need photos of the subject, her schedule, vehicle information, and a retainer. But Mr. Sullivan, once I start digging, I'm going to find things. Things you might not want to know. I already know more than I want to know. I just need proof. The private investigator, his name was Ray Kowalski, and he sounded like he'd seen every kind of human weakness imaginable, agreed to start surveillance on Monday. By the end of the week, I'd have photographs, video recordings, and detailed reports of everywhere Maggie went and everyone she met. Sunday evening passed quietly. We ordered Chinese takeout and watched a movie, playing the role of a normal family, while I mentally cataloged every lie Maggie told and every secret glance she gave her phone. Emma fell asleep on the couch during the movie, and I carried her upstairs to her room like I had when she was little. She stirred as I tucked her in. Dad? She mumbled. You and Mom aren't getting divorced, are you? The question hit me like a punch to the gut. Why would you ask that? Some of my friends' parents got divorced, and they acted like you and Mom are acting. All polite and careful, like they were afraid to say the wrong thing. I smoothed her hair back from her forehead. Get some sleep, kiddo. Everything's going to be okay. But as I turned off her light and closed her door, I knew I was lying. Nothing was going to be okay. By the time I was finished, our family would be destroyed, our house would be sold, and Emma would be forced to choose sides in a war she didn't understand. The thought should have stopped me, should have made me reconsider my plans for revenge and destruction. Instead, it just made me more determined to make sure Maggie paid for every lie she'd told and every promise she'd broken. Downstairs, I found her loading the dishwasher with the careful precision she brought to everything in her life. Emma's worried about us, I said. Maggie's hands stilled on the plates. What did she say? She asked if we were getting divorced. What did you tell her? I told her everything was going to be okay. Maggie turned to face me, her expression unreadable. And do you believe that? I looked at my wife, really looked at her, maybe for the first time in months. She was still beautiful, still elegant, still the woman I'd fallen in love with 20 years ago. But now I could see the guilt in her eyes, the weight of secrets she carried, the careful way she measured every word. I believe everything happens for a reason, I said, and eventually, people get what they deserve. She studied my face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Yes, she said quietly. I suppose they do. That night, I lay awake, listening to her breathe and planning my next moves. By morning, I would begin the process of systematically dismantling the life we'd built together. I would expose her affairs, drain our joint accounts, and make sure everyone in her professional circle knew exactly what kind of person she really was. It was going to be messy and painful, and probably destroy me in the process. I couldn't wait to get started.